Big Chief, like, hell has frozen over.
So, just for the record, sorry about all that stuff I said about
he was just
no prep.
kidding. He was just kidding.
I wasn't talking about you guys. Everyone out here expected me to fail, but here I am, I'm doing it, and all the haters can go to hell.
Big Chief and Murder Nova once looked unstoppable. Together, they became the faces of Street Outlaws, built some of the fastest street cars in America, and formed one of the most iconic partnerships in racing history. Then, almost overnight, everything changed. Fans noticed the signs long before anyone said a word, and questions quickly began to spread. So what really happened between Big Chief and Murder Nova? And how did one of street racing's greatest partnerships quietly come to an end? Join us as we uncover the extraordinary truth behind their split. Two guys, one shop, and the fastest cars in Oklahoma City. Long before Discovery Channel ever pointed a camera at them, Justin Shearer and Shawn Ellington were just two guys who loved building fast cars and hated losing races. Their story really started on the streets of Oklahoma City in the early 2000s, when the two of them figured out that their skills complemented each other almost perfectly. Justin Shearer, also known as Big Chief, started racing at 9 years old. He was a kid who was completely obsessed with speed and had figured out how to turn that obsession into something he was genuinely good at. By the time he met Shawn, he had already been racing the streets of Oklahoma City long enough to have a reputation. Shawn Ellington was raised in Sayre, Oklahoma, where his father Richard ran an auto body shop. He grew up learning cars from the ground up, starting with basic tasks like sweeping the shop floor and working his way into the mechanical side of things until he understood engines the way most people understand their own heartbeat. He moved to Oklahoma City in 2005 and built the Murder Nova, a 1969 Chevy Nova, into one of the most recognizable cars in street racing history. When these two found each other, something clicked. They built and tuned racing cars together since the early 2000s. Just like Batman and Robin, they were a dynamic duo with complementary skills in car building. Together, they constructed some of the most astounding street rods, including OG Murder Nova, the Crow, and the Crow Mod. Chief was the racer, the face, the one who would line up against anybody who thought they had a faster car. Shawn was the builder and the engineer, the one who could make a car do things that should not have been physically possible given its age and its components. They eventually formalized the partnership by co-founding Midwest Street Cars Automotive, a performance shop in Oklahoma City that became the physical home of everything they built together. For nearly 9 years, that shop was the center of gravity for the most competitive street racing operation in the state. And then Discovery Channel came looking for a show. The camera changed everything. When Street Outlaws premiered on Discovery Channel on June 10, 2013, the world outside Oklahoma City got its first proper look at what had been happening on those streets for years. The show became one of Discovery's highest-rated unscripted series almost immediately, with early episodes pulling around 1.5 million viewers per episode in its debut season. By the time it had established itself, it was airing in multiple countries and turning street racers from Oklahoma City into something they had never anticipated being celebrities. Big Chief was the natural center of the show. He was charismatic and could talk about cars in a way that made sense to a total novice without insulting anyone who knew what they were talking about. He hosted, he mediated the competitive trash talk between racers, and he raced himself. He was everywhere the cameras went. Shawn was the fan favorite of a different kind. Quieter, more technical, more focused on the car than on the camera. Murder Nova and its driver became iconic in a way that needed no amplification. That black 1969 Nova pulling into a lineup against anything that dared was appointment television for anyone who had ever cared about quarter-mile times. But here is the thing that nobody really talked about while the show was at its peak. Being a television personality and being a street racer are two entirely different jobs. One requires you to be in front of cameras on a production schedule, available for interviews and promotional appearances, willing to have your personal life become part of the narrative. The other requires you to be in a garage at 2 in the morning, obsessing over a carburetor, thinking about the next race and nothing else. Trying to do both simultaneously, especially while co-running a business together, puts pressure on a friendship that does not announce itself until it is already doing real damage. After spending a lot of time together in order to film and race at the same time, over the years they had grown apart. That is the cleaned-up version. The real version involves two men whose priorities diverged slowly, in ways that neither of them could have predicted when they were just two guys building cars in a garage trying to beat everyone on the street. What exactly changed between them? And when did the fans first notice something was wrong? The first sign. Something was off. Fans did not find out about the split through an announcement. What they noticed was an absence, the kind that only becomes visible when you are looking for something that used to always be there. After they stopped posting pictures together on social media and began attending individual races, fans sensed that something was up. Big Chief visited the No Prep Kings races alone, while Shawn went to the Pro Mod races by himself. Additionally, the Midwest Street Cars automotive watermark and tags were no longer visible on Shawn's social media pictures. Shawn and Phantom had also recently opened a shop called 187 Customs. The watermark switch was the clearest signal. For years, every photo of a car Shawn built or modified carried the Midwest Street Cars branding. Then it stopped, replaced by the 187 Customs logo. In the social media world that street racing fans inhabit, that kind of change does not go unnoticed. The comment sections lit up. The speculation started. People wanted to know what was happening to the partnership that had been the backbone of the show. The announcement that Shawn and Phantom had opened 187 Customs as a separate operation, while Midwest Street Cars continued under Big Chief, confirmed what the social media trail had already suggested. The business was not just cooling down or going through a rough patch, it was splitting in two. The timing matters here. This was becoming publicly visible around 2019 and into 2020, a period when the show was still running. Both men were still technically involved with Street Outlaws, and neither of them had said anything definitive publicly about what was happening between them. Fans spent months watching the evidence accumulate while both Chief and Shawn stayed quiet. And the longer they stayed quiet, the wilder the speculation got. Was there a falling out over money? Was there a fight about the show? Has something happened between them personally that went beyond professional differences? The internet, as it always does, started filling the silence with its own theories. Which makes what Big Chief eventually said even more interesting, because the truth was messier than a fight and cleaner than a betrayal. What Big Chief actually said. When Big Chief finally addressed the split publicly, he did it in a YouTube interview that the street racing community watched very carefully. And what he said diffused the drama almost completely. Big Chief revealed he and Murder Nova had different priorities in life, and over the years, they had grown apart. He clarified that the two have separate passions for cars. Shawn is more into DIY restorations of old cars, while Big Chief has been involved in drag racing ever since he was a kid. That sounded simple, maybe even too simple, but it is actually the most honest possible explanation for what happened to their professional partnership. They had always had complementary skills, Chief the racer, Shawn the builder, But as both of them evolved and the television platform gave each of them the resources to pursue their individual interests more seriously, those complementary skills started pulling them in opposite directions rather than toward the same goal. Shawn's direction was toward custom restoration work, toward the craft of turning old cars into something new. He found that in 187 Customs, a shop that allowed him to do exactly the kind of detailed, hands-on work that had always been his deepest interest. Chief's direction was toward racing, pure, competitive, no-prep drag racing against the best drivers in the country, at events where the only thing that mattered was who crossed the finish line first. The first thing Big Chief made absolutely clear was that there was no bad blood. Big Chief confirmed that he and Shawn are still close friends. He said it repeatedly in the interview in a way that was specific enough to feel genuine rather than rehearsed. This was not two people papering over a genuine falling out with polite statements for public consumption. It was two men who had genuinely remained friends through the dissolution of their business partnership, because the friendship had always been the thing that mattered more than the business anyway. But here is the part that makes you wonder. If they were still close friends, and if the split was purely about different career interests, why did it take so long for either of them to say anything publicly? What were they protecting by staying quiet while the fan theories ran wild? The show was already changing around them. The Big Chief and Murder Nova split did not happen in a vacuum. It happened in the context of a television franchise that was evolving in ways that neither of them fully controlled. And those changes were creating their own friction underneath the more visible story of the business dissolution. Street Outlaws had expanded significantly from its original premise. What started as a show about illegal street racing in Oklahoma City had spawned multiple spin-offs: Memphis, New Orleans, No Prep Kings, and the format had shifted with each iteration. The original show's gritty authenticity, the thing that had made it compelling in the first place, was being stretched across multiple productions with different casts and different rules. In a surprising turn of events, Justin announced his departure from Street Outlaws in April 2022, citing disagreements with the production company's rules and policies, particularly the controversial Your Way In rule. The Race Your Way In policy was the specific trigger, but the underlying issue was broader. Big Chief believed this policy unfairly excluded some skilled racers while giving preference to participants from Street Outlaws, Memphis. The disproportionate representation of the latter group was a major concern for him. He felt like the show was drifting away from the culture that had made it what it was, that the production company was making decisions about who got access and who did not, based on television logic rather than racing logic. For a man who had been racing on those Oklahoma City streets since before the cameras ever showed up, watching production decisions override the hierarchy that the racing community had built on merit was a genuine grievance. He addressed it directly on his YouTube channel, saying he had no issue with the people involved, but could not align himself with rules he thought were fundamentally unfair to deserving racers. Shawn, notably, stayed. He kept racing on the show. And that divergence, Chief out, Shawn in, both of them apparently fine with the other's choice, actually reveals more about the nature of their friendship than any conflict story could. They were not demanding the same thing from each other. They did not need to make the same choices. The friendship was durable enough to survive completely different career decisions without either of them taking it personally. But those different career decisions had real consequences for where they each ended up next. Two men, two completely different futures. By the time the dust settled on all of it, the business split. Big Chief's departure from the show, the social media divergence, the two men who had built the most famous partnership in street racing were operating in almost entirely separate worlds. Big Chief kept the Midwest Street Cars name and the shop. He returned to the business that started it all, Midwest Street Cars Automotive. He talked in interviews about enjoying the freedom of being back to doing things on his own terms. He went racing at independent events. He started building a new project, a twin-turbocharged Pontiac-powered machine that prioritized street characteristics over track performance, which was essentially a statement about his philosophy. He was not chasing professional racing glory. He was chasing the feeling that had gotten him into cars in the first place. He documented the build and his racing appearances on his YouTube channel, where he could control the narrative without a production company inserting its own priorities. He also talked about something that surprised fans who had followed his television career closely. He said he did not miss being on television at all. He said he was loving his time away from it, that he got to do things with cars, like handling the heating and air conditioning work, that he had never been able to do on the show because the camera had always required him to be the race master, the face, the personality. Away from the cameras, he was just a guy who loved cars in all of their complexity, not just the parts that looked good on screen. His personal life had also gone through its own significant changes. His marriage to Alicia Shearer, the woman he had been with since he was 18 and working as a gas station attendant, ended in divorce in 2017 after 10 years together. He had to deal with the divorce as well. After the divorce, he began a relationship with Jackie Brosh, a professional drag racer from Joliet, Illinois, who brought her own impressive racing credentials to the table. Jackie Brosh has competed professionally in drag racing since 1998 and was recognized as Car Chicks Girl of the Year in 2015, receiving a Spitzer dragster as part of the recognition. She and Big Chief shared not just a relationship, but a genuine common identity around what cars meant to them, which is perhaps the most fitting possible partnership for a man whose entire life has been organized around speed. Shawn's trajectory went in a direction that even longtime fans of the show did not fully anticipate. Murder Nova goes legitimate. While Big Chief was stepping away from the television world and going back to his roots, Shawn Ellington was doing something that looked, from the outside, like the opposite. He was building something bigger than anything Street Outlaws had given him. By 2026, Shawn was the CEO of 187 Customs LLC, had debuted a new Pro Mod Camaro for professional competition, and co-founded the Outlaw Syndicate Small Tire Series with Ryan Martin and Carson Baker, featuring $20,000 payouts on prepped tracks. The Outlaw Syndicate is a race series, a real, independent, organized competition built from scratch by people who had been the faces of television racing for a decade and decided they could build something better on their own terms. Shawn partnered with Ryan Martin, the reigning powerhouse of the No Prep Kings circuit, and together they created a format designed to give the racing community what it actually wanted: serious competition, real money on the line, and direct access to the drivers who made the culture what it is. Street Outlaws got put on pause, and we're not going to stop racing, Shawn revealed. We're going to go somewhere, and we wanted to bring our fan base over to the NHRA's fan base and just make it as big as we possibly can. And then, in December 2025, something happened that put the whole trajectory into perspective. Street Outlaws stars, including Shawn Ellington, Ryan Martin, and Scott Taylor, were confirmed to compete at select NHRA national events beginning in 2026 in a new exhibition series. Big Chief was not part of it. Not because he was excluded in some pointed way, but because the direction that the NHRA partnership and the Outlaw Syndicate represented, professional track racing, organized competition, the institutional side of the sport, was exactly the direction he had said he was not interested in pursuing. He had been consistent about this. He believed, and had said repeatedly, that professional track racing was not what the show had been built on. The show's soul had always been the street, unorganized, unofficial, dangerous, authentic. Moving it onto professional tracks, with grandstands and entry fees and qualifying sessions, changed something fundamental about what it was. So the two men who built this thing together ended up on different sides of the sport's biggest philosophical question. And the split that everyone had spent years trying to understand suddenly made complete sense, not as a falling out between two friends, but as the natural endpoint of two people who had always been going in slightly different directions and had finally traveled far enough that they could no longer pretend otherwise. Do you think Big Chief made the right call stepping away from the show he helped build? Or did he leave too much on the table? And is the Outlaw Syndicate the future that street racing was always heading toward? Or has the culture lost something by moving off the streets and into the grandstands? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.